Hello, welcome to our session as part of the EMCC Global Provider Summit. I'm absolutely delighted to be welcoming Dr. Damien Goldfarb to talk about team coaching supervision for us. And I'd love to just introduce Damien. Damien's president of the Goldfarb Consulting Group. But he comes to us with great credentials, Master Certified Coach, Accredited Team Coach, Certified Supervisor, and a past President of the International Coaching Federation. So it's going to be really great to hear from Damien, the insights that he has into team coaching. And he's got a number of topics to cover in this session. We're going to be looking at the differences between individual, group and team coaching supervision, looking at the team coaching competencies from EMCC, and talking about the unique challenges that we have in team coaching supervision. So absolutely really excited to be here, and big thanks to Damien. I'm going to hand over to Damien now to give us a little bit more of an introduction to himself and the session. I'm going to be here monitoring the chat, and I'm Wendy Stroom, EMCC Global Accreditation Manager. Many thanks.
Thank you, Wendy. Welcome everybody, wherever you are in the world. I am in Los Angeles. Do you want to say hi and write in the chat room where you are connecting from? This is going to be a very interactive session. And I know that we are all experts at multitasking. The invitation is to be present and use this opportunity to connect with the community that is here today. So my goal is to learn from each other in the next 90 minutes. So I'm going to be inviting everybody to be present, connected, sharing your experiences and learning from each other. So that's my goal for the next session. I see many familiar faces, but it's great to see participants who are graduates from my coaching programs, my coaching supervision programs, team coaching programs, all of these trainings that I have been doing over the years. And that's the reason why I am here today presenting at the EMCC conference, because I run a supervision program that is ESQA, is the accreditation from EMCC to coaching supervision programs. And our program is one of the pioneers in Latin America. It's the first program in Spanish that meet the criteria. And over the last 6 years, we have trained around 200 supervisors. Some of them are here, so great to see you here. And team coaching supervision is relatively new. There are not many resources on this topic, and I want to share with you today some of the resources that are available. I have the opportunity this year to attend the program with Peter Hawkins, and I was seeing Jennifer Britton. You were there with me, weren't you? I don't know if anybody else was in that session. So I'm going to share a little bit of what Peter Hawkins has to say about team coaching supervision, and then David Clutterbuck also had a session today before on the same topic. I really think that both of them contributions are really important to this field. And I also going to present a case study, so we cannot think about how we will deal with a situation where we are supervising a team coach. Now, here people are coming from different places. Some of you are trainers. Some of you participate in developing and training coaches, mentor coaches, supervisors, team coaches. Some of you are graduates from the program, so it doesn't matter where is your role or experience. The invitation is to participate and learn from each other. So I'm seeing here in the chat room, here there is some interaction. So we have people from Toronto, Germany, Prague, Italy, Portugal, Glasgow. That's great. I love this. Canada, somebody else, one of my neighbors here, Courtney, it's from Australia, Greece. I love this global community. So let's start. Let's learn from each other. I'm going to share a few slides just to be sure we are all in the same page. And I'm going to share some resources. My accent, if you're wondering, is from Argentina, but I live in Los Angeles and I have been here for 32 years. And I like to develop the professional coaching practice. So coaching is not a profession, it's a professional practice. And I do believe that supervision is one of the ways that we develop the coaching professional practice globally. So that's the reason why I have been committed to work in supervision and train supervisors worldwide for a few years. So let's share some of the same language. What do we mean by supervision? And I know here a few of the graduates from my program who can really do a great job doing that. But why don't we do that? Yeah, let's get some of you to instead of me doing all of the work, let's get people or anybody who would like to share what is supervision. Who would like to do it? Who would like to explain what is supervision to our colleagues here?
I'll take a stab at it.
Yeah, Reggie, go ahead.
Hey, good day, sir. So I hope I'm able to do you proud from your training. Coaching supervision is a masterful blend of many modalities, but particularly in creating a reflective space where the supervisor and supervisee can collectively explore at the request of the supervisee an area of their coaching that they have curiosity in, and in providing that reflective space affords them the opportunity to zoom in and zoom out of who they are being as a coach and how that applies to them and the relationship they have with their client.
Great definition, Reggie. You couldn't have done a better job. So I think that this is also the modality in training supervisors or other programs is engaging participants from the beginning. So I see my role, and this conference is for providers. So when I share some of my philosophies and techniques as a trainer and facilitator, I believe that I do have something to offer, but I do believe that everybody in the training have a lot to offer. So I'm all the time engaging people to bring their wisdom and their knowledge. And sometimes whatever they said is not accurate, so I need to correct. And if I do that, I do it with a lot of respect and care and love, because we still don't want to embarrass anybody. But I think that my philosophy is that when I'm training coaches, team coaches, or supervisors, is that we are all learning together. And this is the same thing, the philosophy I have here today with you, is that we are all learning together. And in this learning process, we engage people from the beginning in many ways. One is, for example, what I did, ask you introduce yourself. In the chat room, I asked somebody to share the definition instead of me sharing the definition. But then what I would do is to reinforce the message. So for example, I wanted to reinforce from Reggie's definition, the idea of reflective practice. So supervision is an opportunity to reflect together. Unfortunately, the word supervision is not the best word, because when we think about supervision, we think about guidance or management or telling people what to do. One way that we have found that is a creative way to deal with that is separating the word in two. Supervision. So we should separate the word in two in supervision, and you talk about taking some distance and looking at your work as you're doing as a coach, together with your supervisor, is a better way, I think, to relate to this process. That is a learning process, and it's an ongoing process. And my personal perspective is that all coaches should be working with a supervisor. It doesn't matter how much experience you have. I have been a coach for 30 years. I work with Peter Hawkins as a supervisor. I'm working with Tatiana Bachkirova now. I believe that we always have blind spots. We always have spaces where we need to look that we may be missing. And I also believe that supervision should be part of coaching training. So we started offering supervision different than mentor coaching, giving feedback on coaching skills, but having this space to reflect on the work of the coach in our coaching programs. And I do believe in the future that may be a trend, being sure that all coaches receive not only mentoring about their skill, but also a space to look at their challenges as coaches during coaching training, not after. So let me share with you a few slides. That's okay? Good. So supervision, what is good for? And the idea is, what I was saying, is for an opportunity to keep learning and growing. Does not matter how much experience we have. Now, what is EMCC definition of supervision? It's a reflective dialogue with the practice supervisor, supporting the supervisor's practice, development, and well-being. And that's the reason why there are like three functions. That one is that the coach maintain appropriate professional standards, they facilitate their development, and also provide support for their well-being. So these are the three key functions. And I know here I'm seeing many familiar faces. I know half of the people at least today are supervisors, but we may have people who are not supervisors. So if you are not, you're getting a sense of what is supervision and how it works. Now, what is the difference between individual, group, and team coaching supervision? So let's go. When can you help me to send people in groups of 4 to have a brief conversation for 5 minutes? It's a small, brief conversation, not a long conversation. I also believe that to get people engaged, the most people participate in small groups and share their opinions and listen to their voices, the more engagement and the more learning. So let's have only 5 minutes, a brief debrief. What is the difference between, you think, supervision, individual, group, and team coaching supervision? Welcome back. Welcome back. And if you felt that you want to stay longer, did you? Anybody wanted to stay longer talking about that? That's a good indication, that you're engaged. That's good. And yeah, we can spend a lot of time talking about that, but we want to move on. We want to be sure that we have some understanding about some of what we are talking today. We are talking about team coaching supervision, different than individual and group supervision. So I was in a group with Fatima and Michelle Moral. And Fatima, do you want to share briefly with people what we discussed?
Individual, it's one-to-one, a supervisor and a supervisee. With group supervision, we have like a group of coaches and a supervisor. So, but each coach can act as a supervisee or also almost a supervisor, because it can make questions, it can be curious, and can be in this learning. So we are learning together in a group. And in the team supervision, it's when we have like a team coach, and can be a group of coaches, or can also be of team coaches, or can also be the coach and the co-coach. That is also very interesting when you do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatima. That can be an interesting thing to pay attention to. Like in team coaching, many times we work with a co-team coach. So when you go to supervision, you go together, and you don't want to go separately. Like I am teaching a team coaching class, and it was a misunderstanding, and the two team coaches went to work with different supervisors. And I said, no, you need to work together, with the same supervisor, and think about what happened between both of you and how you are approaching this team. So the idea here is that in individual supervision, you work one-on-one, but as Fatima was saying, when you work with a group, there are pros and cons. Some coaches feel too vulnerable to open up in a group. So sometimes group supervision is not for everyone. In one-on-one supervision, there need to be a lot of trust between the supervisor and supervisee, so the supervisee may open up. And sometimes in training supervisors, when they start supervising and they have the first sessions with coaches, they may find challenges of coaching opening up and being vulnerable, because we can be in many different places about how willing and open we are to discuss our work. Like in the United States, where I live, there was a lot, they still are, but less than they used to be. And Meryl Moritz is here. She knows because we were in the global board of directors of the International Coach Federation 10 years ago. And there was a lot of resistance about the idea of supervision, somebody to help us to reflect on our work. So in part was because of misunderstanding of what is supervision. What still is there, the misunderstanding of what is supervision, still there is a lot of work that needs to be done outside, particularly in Europe, the UK and Germany and France. that I do believe the UK and France are advanced compared to other countries in the understanding of coaching supervision. But the idea here is that that resistance can be with the misunderstanding, but also with this idea of being vulnerable and being open and discussing your work and your clients, and being open also to look at your blind spots, what you may not be seeing, from good and bad, from good in terms of, okay, we may not be aware that we are doing things that are very effective that we need to keep doing, or we may be missing things consistently, and we don't have a way to look at that because we don't know what we don't know. So how we will do that? So that is what supervision helps us. Now, group supervision, the advantage is, I'm personally as a supervisor, I love group supervision because you have the opportunity to learn not only from the person bringing the case, but from everybody else. We are all learning from each other experiences. So the idea is that one person brings a case, but everybody is engaged and participating and bringing their questions, metaphors. We can be creative, very creative working with groups. Now, team coaching, supervision can be done, as Fatima was saying, individually. One team coach comes to supervision with a partner if they are working together, or also can be a group of team coaches that bring their cases and their situations and they all learn from each other. But in terms of similarities and differences, we were talking with Michelle Moral, who many of you may know. Michelle is one of the pioneers of coaching supervision worldwide, wrote a few books in French. Unfortunately, not in English. I'm still waiting for the translation one of these days. And what Michel was saying in our trial discussion was, he was talking about the we, the experience of we, and how in supervision of teams, how we work with that we. Do you want to, Michel, share a little bit about that?
Yes, in fact, if you consider a team, there are three elements. Team members, including the leader. There are interactions between the members. And thirdly, and this is an approach that we have in France especially, there is a we. A we is a kind of strange entity which emerges when the team members say sentences beginning by we. In our team, we work hard. In our team, we deliver on time. In our team, we celebrate with passion. So these are different elements of the we, which is a kind of third entity. There is that notion of third element on which we can work when we do team coaching. And that's quite important to work on that we, because the we has its own life. Is independent from, I can show, I have exercises that can show that the we is doing just what he wants. It's the we doesn't obey to the leader or team members.
Thank you, Michel, for that. I reminded about looking at the we as an entity. So we want to look at the team as a whole entity. So we work with that when we are observing, noticing, sharing, intervening, asking questions. So thank you for bringing that piece. Now, some of you are aware of the EMCC coaching supervision competencies. I think that before, I want to talk about this first, the team coaching competencies. Wendy shared them with you in the chat room. So if you go to the chat room, you will see that there are two links. And these two links are resources for you to learn what is EMCC position around team coaching, what is the competency model. And these are really good resources if you're not familiar with them. And also, I really appreciate EMCC core competency model for supervisors. I don't know how many of you are familiar. We developed our coaching supervision program around EMCC core competencies for supervisors. So these are really helpful in the work that we do. And it's interesting, if you look at the core competencies for team coaches, supervisors need to be able not only to demonstrate these competencies, but also to have conversations and reflect with team coaches around these competencies. So we have multi-stakeholder contracting and relationship management. And this is one of my favorite areas of discussion and exploration in coaching and team coaching supervision, because many times a lot of challenges and conflict and situations come up as a result of poor contracting. So I do have a bias in my work and in my trainings about the importance of contracting. So people who are here who have been in my coaching or supervision trainings, you know how much I reinforce the importance of spending time in contracting. In contracting, I like contracts in writing. I am from Argentina, in Latin America. People usually don't do much in writing, but I always like to reinforce you want to have things in writing so there is more clarity. And in terms of contracting, you need to be aware of the multi-stakeholders that you're working with. There is a really nice chapter on multi-stakeholders contracting from Peter Hawkins and Eve Turner in their book about systemic coaching. Highly recommend that book and particularly that chapter. And that gives us a lot of guidance on how to pay attention to all of the different variables. So in supervision, contracting will always be a key topic of conversation, discussion, and exploration and reflection. Diagnostics. What assessments are the team coaches applying? And as supervisors, we do need to be familiar. We do need to do research. We need not to be experts, but we need to be familiar with different diagnostic tools. Evidence-based methods of team effectiveness, systemic thinking and group dynamics, team coaching models and approaches, managing the team coach process, experimentation and adaptability, partnering with other coaches and facilitators, developing your own team coach practice. This is about the business of team coaching, supervision and reflective practice. And what is interesting about supervision of team coaching is that for EMCC, supervision has been a practice for many years. For the International Coaching Federation is relatively new. But interesting, in their new credential for team coaching, they're making supervision mandatory. What I found a good indication of the importance of supervision in general, but particularly in team coaching because of the complexity of the work working with teams. Understanding self and self-development, being aware of how we use self as instrument, and self-care and resilience as some of the competencies of the team coaches, and how supervisors need to be also familiar and effective at these competencies. So going back, these are the supervision competencies, and here we are putting together supervision competencies and team coaching competencies, and I think that for EMCC, that's the next step, is to bring them together. I know there are some people working on that. We still don't have something concrete, but how we bring together all of the team coaching competencies with the supervision competencies. Basically, you can see it's about managing the contract and process, the three functions of supervision we covered at the beginning, how the supervisor facilitates development, provides support, and promote professional standards. This is about ethics, supporting coaches to work through ethical dilemmas. And then the capacity of the supervisor in relationship with himself or herself, about self-awareness, relationship awareness of the different stakeholders, relationship between the supervisor and the coach and the client, and then systemic awareness, what's happening in the system, in the context, how the context is affecting the work of the supervisor, the coach, and the client, and how we facilitate group supervision too when we're working with groups. So let me stop here and let me ask if there are any questions so far. Any questions or comments? You can just raise your hand and we can do this interactive. Any questions, comments, or observations?
Damien, there's a couple of bits in the chat that are surfacing. So there's a question around the supervision technique is the same, but the topics are different from a one-to-one coaching. This is from, I think it's Ali.
Yeah. Great question. Great question. Yeah. So the topics may be different because the challenge may be different. And I do think that the skills of the supervisor also need to be different. I think that the supervisor working with team coaches also need to develop some awareness and some modalities, exercises, practices that are a little bit different to adapt to the different topics or issues or challenges that the team coach will bring. So that's the reason why I believe that it's important. Not all coaches may do team coaching. I do believe, and I strongly believe, that a coach who is going to work with the team needs a specific training on team coaching. And I do believe that the supervisor who is going to supervise team coaching, they also need to have experience as team coaches. I don't believe, this is my, you may not agree with me and that's okay, but I believe that for you to be a supervisor of team coaching, you need to have a team coaching experience first. Michelle, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I just want to say that when we do team coaching, the coachee is the team. It's not any of the individual, any of the, so we have to understand what does that mean to have a coaching who is a team, which is a team, you know, that's and so the supervisor has to also be aware of that. So that's the big difference.
Thank you, Michelle. That's a good point to reinforce. And Jonathan, good seeing you here. I see that you have a comment. Do you want to comment on that for everybody in the chat room? What you said there, I think is an interesting point.
Well, so I think two things. One thing I had written is it's easy to get confused about, are we talking about who are we coaching in terms of it's an individual, a co-pair of coaches, a group of coaches, and what sort of coaching are they doing? Is it individual coaching or group coaching or team coaching? And each of those combinations is possible. And the other comment I had was, I think that once we coach teams, we're likely to bring a different awareness to our individual coaching. And once we supervise team coaches, we're likely to bring a different awareness to our supervision of individual coaching as well.
Yes, I agree with you that one experience enrich the experience in other with other clients and other experiences. Great point. Thank you, Jonathan, for clarifying that. Anybody else? Any comment before we move on? I know here there are many people who have a lot to say, so but we can move on. So I want to share with you some sources of places. I know that Michelle has stuff in French, but these are 3 places where you may go if you're interested in team coaching supervision, you want to get deeper. This is not the last edition from Peter Hawkins' book, but in the Peter Hawkins book, the leadership team coaching, this is the previous, this is not the latest edition, but this is the 3rd and there is a 4th edition. But in the 3rd edition, there is in chapter 15, a chapter that focuses on team coaching supervision. That I think is great. And it's a great resource. So if you want to learn more about it, that is a good place to go. The other place is in the Tatiana Bashkirova in the latest edition, mentor coaching and supervision. And I have here is the chapter 21 of this book. The chapter 21 is from Alice Hodge, and also it's a very interesting chapter. And these are all great books. In the previous edition, the previous edition didn't have a chapter. The first edition didn't have a chapter on team coaching supervision. And in this edition, there is a chapter, and I highly recommend it. And if you get this book, I do use these books in training supervisors. There is a chapter that I wrote on virtual supervision. So that's if you're interested in topics around working virtually, that may be of your interest. And interesting, I wrote that chapter with Eve Turner before COVID. So we had to rewrite it after COVID. So there is a first part before COVID and the second part after COVID. Now, there is another resource in this book from Routledge, Coaching Supervision, that was edited by Joe Birch and Peter Welch. And there is also a chapter from Alice Hodge on team coaching supervision. And this is in chapter 11. And she wrote that with David Clutterbuck. So these are 3 places where you may want to go and learn more about what I'm talking today. And when I was thinking about the session, I decided to focus on Peter Hawkins' 10 models of supervision, going from the 7I model to the 10I model. So let's look. Some of you, everybody here who are supervisors, are familiar with the 7I models. Briefly, I can be talking about that for a whole class, but briefly, and this graphic looks very complicated. Sometimes this graphic, instead of simplifying, make it look even more difficult than what it is. But the idea in the 7I model for supervision is that we have 3 systems. The relationship between the coach and the client. And 1 is the client and the client situation. I number 2 is what the coach is doing with that client. And I number 3 is the relationship between the coach and the client. And from a systemic perspective, we're interested in relationships. So we may be looking at that relationship between the coach and the client. And then I want to ask everybody to mute yourself, please. I would really appreciate if everybody's muted so we don't hear sounds in the background. And then we have the next 3 I's that are about the relationship between the coach and the supervisor. I number 4 is the coach, or in this case can be if the supervisee is a team coach, instead of being the coach with the team coach. I number 5 is the relationship between the supervisor and the team coach or the coach, including parallel processes, how whatever is happening here is repeating in the relationship between the coach and the client. And I number 6 is the supervisor. That is, okay, what's within self-assist from me, what's happening to me during the session. And 7 is the wider context. So the first 3 I's are about relationship coach-client. The next 3 are about the supervisor-coach. And number 7 is the whole overall system and wider context. Now, when we're working with teams, we're supervising a team coach, want to add another component. So for example, we may explore in the situation of the team client, who are the stakeholders? Who are the stakeholders of this team? So from a systemic perspective, and is this team paying attention or not to the different stakeholders? Who they are, the description of them. Number 2 is how they engage with the stakeholders. How is that relationship? What is working, what is not working, what may be some blind spots. And number 3, in terms of the relationship between the team and its stakeholders, what else may be in the context? What else we maybe want to pay attention when we are looking at these relationships in between them? So basically, in this model, Peter Hawkins is paying much more attention to the stakeholders and all of the other systems that the team client is engaged. So I found that something to pay attention to. And one of the differences when we're talking about individual, group, and team coaching, and particularly supervision. So how we can use in team coaching supervision some questions about the different stakeholders. So that would be one of the things to pay attention to. Now I have a case. I'm going to share with you a case, and I am going to invite you to go to small groups. So you may want to, sometimes people like to take a picture of this slide. So you can, when we go to small groups, you can discuss that in small groups. But the idea would be that you, based on this case, you discuss, see, if you will be the supervisor and you will be working with a team coach, and this is only one person, it's not a team of 2, what questions would you ask? What would be you curious? Where would you go? So let's imagine that the team coach comes to you and tells you that you're working virtually and you have been referred by a colleague, just to get a little bit of a context. Now, this team coach is working alone. He's not working with a partner, and he's working for a non-profit social agency organization. And I changed a little bit the situation, so we will not be able to identify where exactly this happened. So I moved it to Argentina, where I am from, but it was not there. But it's okay. For this case, for discussion, we will imagine that they are based in Argentina, and they are working in this team with people who are local and international in person, and they are in Argentina. But the team coach is located in US. and is doing the work virtually, even though it's originally from Argentina and can relate to, we're from the same country, so can relate to the team and the cultural issues. So the team coach was hired, was a global initiative to bring all teams to the next level and prepare them for future challenges. And the team leader of this team is new, and the problem is that does not have much credibility yet. And is not very supportive of this process because it is not something that the team leader wants to do with their team, but it's an organizational event. So the team coach interviewed all members individually just to assess how is the team and what would be the best approach to work with them. And there was a sense of hopelessness and resignation. So what would you do? What would you like to explore? You get to meet this team, you're getting to work as a supervisor with this team coach. What would you like to explore with this team coach? What questions come up for you? So just to remind you, I think what is important here is that the team coach that the team coach is working with the team have local and international members. This is done virtually, that the team leader is not very supportive of this process, and that after the team coach interview, all members experience that people were not very hopeful, and there was some resignation about the culture of the organization and what will happen in the future. So not a lot of information. But with this information, what will you ask? What are you curious about? What would you like to explore? So will you help us to go in groups of 5 people? We are 33, so we can have maybe 6 groups of 5s. Welcome back. Welcome back. I hope that you have a good opportunity to interact with other colleagues and meet some new colleagues from other parts of the world. So look here, we have 6 groups. We may not have time for all of the groups, but let's start. Who would like to share some of the comments, reactions, learnings, questions? It's just an opportunity to reflect. Supervision is a reflective practice. And this case study was just an opportunity to reflect on a case. Of course, you don't have a lot of details, a lot of information, but what would you have? What came up for you? So who would like to share? Who would like to start?
I'm going to jump in and just say I really enjoyed hearing the production from various different people's practices and across the different 10 eyes. It just was really satisfying process. Noticing myself in it.
Great to hear. That's our goal here with this conference, is that you have the opportunity to interact and meet people from all over the world working on coaching, supervision, team coaching. So anything
and I would
about
make the point that Michelle was making, that was just saying something, so maybe you'd come in and say what you were going to say, Michelle, but something about running group supervision, this production of, from everybody's different perspective, of the multiple intelligences on the team.
Yeah, so that's the advantage when you work with a group. So like in group supervision, you can see exactly, Catherine, how people bring their own experiences. And now what can be interesting too is, and there are different positions about that when you're doing group supervision, my personal preference, and I always own whatever I share. So this is my personal preference, my opinion. Other people may think differently. But my preference is when I put together group supervision is that I bring people at the same level. So they bring similar experiences, because sometimes if you put in the same group people without a lot of experience as coaches, and then somebody with a lot of experience, it may or may not work, the chemistry. The person with more experience may learn from the other people, but most of the time we end having a role that may not be as productive that if it's working with people at the same level of expertise and experience. Somebody may be in a group and maybe a team coaching supervision, and it's individual team coaching group supervision. And in the team coach work, some people may be very experienced team coaches and somebody not experienced. That may be okay. But if the other way around is more difficult. So the preference is to have people at the same level so they can bring the same kind of challenges and learn from each other from that space. About this case, anything, Catherine, that your group that want to share that questions that you may have? Because here we don't have solutions or answers, we have just questions and hypotheses. So what question came up for you? Who would like to share? Should I ask? This is what I do. When I ask, I like silence. So silence is good. You know, silence is, I train coaches, supervisors, embrace silence. So silence is our friend. But at one point, I need to ask, like I am teaching a supervision program now in China. And it's challenging because it's all with translator. So I never know what's really going on. It's a really good exercise of trusting the process and trusting the participant and trusting the interpreter, because you are completely in the hands of the interpreter. So whatever happens depends on what is translated. So Meryl, what came up in your group?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I wasn't able to hear the assignment firsthand, but fortunately Robin read it to me in a dramatic reading, so I was able to grasp it. And so my approach, you know, you're a contracting geek and I like contracting too, but my approach is always kind of coming from a system view. And when go back to that question of what would you know, the team coach interviewed everyone on the team. I wonder if they really are a team or a team in name only. And is his job not to bring a working group, a siloed group, into the team space? Because you said they have to elevate the team, but first you have to find out, is it a team? So, you know,
that's a great question. That's a great question. Let me stop there, because this is a really important point. There are many misunderstandings about what is a real team. So we call teams to every group of people getting together. And many times groups are not teams. So I was wondering, if everybody wants to participate in the chat room, how will you separate? How will you distinguish a group from a team? What will be for you the key distinction? And Meryl, I want to keep you hearing what you have to say, but I want to for a minute stop and have let's all agree. We were talking, what is the difference between a group and a team? So if everybody wants to participate and write down in the chat room, what is for you a difference between a group and a team? How will you know that you're working with a team or a group? And Tim, were you going to say something about that? And don't forget you.
Yeah, Damien, I just wanted to ask you, has the team coach also interviewed the leader of the team?
Yes.
There's no, so team leader is part of the team.
Yes.
Has he interviewed his boss as well?
Yes, and what you're bringing, Tim, is a really important point. This is one of the key differences between supervising individuals and groups and team coaches, that you have the team leader. And the whole dynamics with the team leader and the relationship can be something that the supervisor want to pay a lot of attention. Because many times there are triangulations between the team coach, the team leader, and the team.
Yeah.
And in this triangulation may happen that the team leader may or may not be supportive of the team coaching process, or may feel threatened by the team coach, or may enter into competition with the team coach. And the team coach needs to explore this in supervision. So this is in supervision where you may see what the dynamics, what's happening in the work, to what extent that relationship between the coach, team coach, and the team leader is playing. And yes, definitely the team is an entity, as Michelle was saying before, it's a we, and the team leader as part of that team may be supporting the engagement or not. And many times we know that we are working in organizations and companies, and they call us to work as coaches, and we know that when we start working, that the person who needs the coaching is not the client but the boss. Anybody experience that? Working in an organization, and the person who really needs the coaching is the boss, not the person that's hiring to do the work. And here in team coaching is similar. Many times The leader needs coaching, not only the team. But what is different and new now, and I heard that today in the morning in the conference, David Clutterbuck was in a session with Tammy Turner, and they were talking about the importance of team coaching in organizations. I don't know if anybody was there. It was early for most of you. So what they were talking was, they were saying that companies are realizing that coaching is great for leaders, but it's even greater and even more important for teams, because the leader can be great, but if the team is not, it's a big problem. So now companies and organizations are really investing in seeing how we make our teams more effective, particularly after COVID-19. COVID-19 make us work virtually. We need to develop new ways of collaborating when we were not able to meet in person. So this new trend toward the future, and this is one of my passions, looking about the future, studying the future and doing foresight work. I do believe that if we look at the future, we will look at and we will see more team effectiveness, more investment in supporting teams to be more effective. And I think team coaches have a key role there, and team coaching supervisors too. Meryl, sorry, we kept going, but I didn't forget you. Let's finish your idea and then let's go to Jonathan.
No, that's fine. I mean, we can drop it there. Just that notion is that it's of course important to forge the relationship, but the challenge of the team coach could be much greater, because then you have whatever stage the team is in forming, if it's even forming and it's not misnamed, and it's not just a lot of people thrown together at a problem with a deadline and no experience working together. So that could be a real challenge. So, I'm taking it from a systemic view and then work backwards into like what will be needed. So anyway.
That's a great point.
My colleagues went the other direction, and that's great too.
No, that's a great point. It's the group dynamics. What stage of team development is the team, and that will require differences from, and that's interesting because it requires different work from the team coach, but also different work from the team leader. The role of the team leader also changes based on the stages of the team development. Now, before we go to Jonathan, if everybody want to look at the chat room, here we have a lot of people sharing the differences between groups and supervision and teams. And if I had to define one key difference, is that in the team, people need each other to accomplish the common goal. So that will be one of the key differentiators. People need each other. They cannot accomplish what they need to accomplish if they don't collaborate and support each other, and they all have one result. Now, sometimes it's a little bit gray. For example, let's imagine a team, an executive team, where each executive has his or her own team and has his or her own responsibility for that team. And some may or may not need the other teams to be able to do their job. Sometimes people depend on each other, but sometimes they don't. Are they a team? At the end of the day, they are not measured as a team, like they are measured only on the result of their own team under them, but they are not evaluated based on how they work together as an executive team with their other colleagues. So that may or may not be a team based on this. It's a group of people that they meet and they share and they give each other reports, or a team what they call of professors at the university. They have these monthly meetings. Everybody share what they're doing with the students, but everyone is doing their own thing. Now, are they a team or not? You may say yes, because at the end of the day, they all are developing professionals. So everyone contributes. By the end of the program, the graduates of the program, that will be the outcome, that they are collaborating to get a very skillful professional. But other people may say, no, they are not a team because they don't need each other. They don't depend each other to do their work. So you can look at it from these two different perspectives. Jonathan?
Yeah, I was thinking that just as we were talking about focusing not just on the team members, but the team leader, systemically, where do you stop? Because I think you need to go up potentially at least one level to the team leader's boss, because have they been clear with the team leader and the team about why they've been assigned to team coaching? And I think that's one of the potential failure points, where there's a sponsor who says, yes, great, I'll sign the check, but hasn't communicated to the team, and here's what I need from the team coaching.
That's a great point. That is about contracting. Again, contracting. It's about how we are clear. And do you know what? Sometimes there is a very different idea in the head of the human resources person who is calling you to work with the team. The idea from the boss of the team leader, and the team members. What do you do? What do you do when everybody has a different priority and a different perspective and a different goal? What will you do? This is to anybody. Jonathan, bring in your question. What do you do when there is not alignment? Anna?
I have a question in that scenario, Damien.
Mm-hmm.
How does that align with your own values as a coach, with your own internal beliefs? You know, when
That's
you have such a conflict between the team goal, the hierarchy, whoever hired you goal, and then individuals. So where you come in as a coach, so you obviously has to be neutral. So how do you approach that?
That's a great question. How do you supervise that too? How do you supervise the coach coming to you and say, no, I don't know what to do. Everybody has a different goal. Who should I pay attention to? Now, like, you know, I may have a coaching approach and ask you, what do you think? But I don't think you would like that. So I think that here, probably it depends on the context. My approach is always to bring into conversation, just to put things on the table to the extent that you can. So if you may go to the person who originally called you, the sponsor, and maybe bring the sponsor, bring the boss, maybe bring everybody together and say, okay, these are the different goals. What should we do? Let's decide all of the parts, how this intervention may work. Now, Anna, there is another possibility too. There is a possibility, and this is a very important one, particularly training team coaches, the team may not be ready for coaching.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when, I don't know how many of you here are training coaches in school, and part of your work is training coaches. You know that many times when coaches are starting coaching, they want to coach everybody. So they say yes to all engagements. And many times the clients are not even understanding what is coaching, but this is for free, for their training for coaching school. So everybody say yes, and they don't know what they're getting into. And not everybody is coachable. Not everybody understands what is coaching if the coach has not done a very effective job in explaining what is coaching. Now, in team coaching, it's the same. Not all team coaches are ready for coaching. Sometimes they need other interventions before, such as sometimes training. They need information to work more effectively. Sometimes they need more clarity from the leader in terms of the vision, where the organization is going. Sometimes they need team building. So one way to distinguish team building from team coaching is that team coaching is about performance, and team building is about building trust and getting people to know each other. So sometimes you need to do the team building to do the team coaching later. And usually team coaching is maybe a couple of interventions, a retreat, activity where people get to know each other, doing some testing or some activities. Now, not all teams, and this is important, when we are starting and we contract, and I'm going back to your question, it's about bringing the different expectations to the table and agreeing in what we're going to be working on. And sometimes in that process also evaluating if the team is ready for coaching or they need something else, training, team building, or other modality. So most of the time, team coaching engagement have these two elements, the assessment, with interviews, people with some tests, and then the intervention. Thank you for the question. Going back to the case, we have a few more minutes to talk about the case. Any other ideas, thoughts, reactions about the case that you had to discuss? Yes, Fatima.
I can talk a little bit about my group. We spoke about really contracting for the session, but also contracting what kind of relationship we could develop with the coach, what is needed, and what kind of if it will be more challenge more challenges, more reflection, what really he wants to achieve and what kind, and probably use some metaphors also to identify better this kind of relation, and also to identify the relation that the coaching is feeling that he has with the team now. We also spoke a little bit about the parallel processes that could be here, probably if this sense of it was like hopelessness, or it can be transmitting also to the coach. Probably it has several layers of complexity, and how we can explore that better. And also, Marco, I don't know if he wants to share, but he shared with us also a very interesting structure that he has and use in supervision. But I would love if he can also share.
On the chat, I share my article. It's just a triangle, come from Matthias Varga von Kivet from Structure Construction. And it talks about 3 levels of value. The value, the concept of the knowledge, the data, the idea, the numbers we have. The other part is the structure. So something about the rules. And the other point is the trust. And so we can use this triangle in order to analyze with the supervisee this 3 level about what about data, what about the experience that is the line between knowledge and trust and structure. And we have different plane, my plane as a supervisor with my triangle, the plane of the supervisee with his triangle, and the plane of the client or the team coaching client, the stakeholders. We can add many, many layers. And these triangles are connected by the lines, because my structure is connected with the structure of the coachee, the supervisee. If we make too much strength on this rope, the plane is not completely parallel, but they move. Everything we put fall down. So we need to balance these 3 points in order to analyze what we need for this. If we think about this team coaching, what about the structure of the team? What about the trust in this team? What about you manage the trust in this team? And so we can explore by this 3 lens that also is the function of the EMCC supervision as a form of dialogue. In every culture have this triangle, and we can see also the mind, the knowledge, the body as the structure, and the relationship, the heart as the trust. And so this could be.
Thank you. I didn't see the article. If you want to put it again, maybe went to your small group, but not to the big group.
No, I put it. Oh, okay. I put in the big room. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's good resource. And by the way, if anybody here has any resources that you want to share, please feel free to do it. We are all learning from each other, so I always encourage people to share resources. Team coaching supervision is new. There are not too many programs available in the market right now. I am going to be starting one next year, but there are not many options because all of this is pretty new. So there is a lot to learn. And I believe that for now, I think what is interesting is being curious. And when we're supervising teams, is like being sure that we ask a lot of questions as supervisors to help the team coach to explore whatever they need. So this is what will be unique in this case. When the team coach is what specifically the team coach needs from us supervisors, because we can go in many different directions. So I will be curious in this case to ask the team coach, okay, what would you need specifically in this space? What do you want to reflect? And something that came up was the issue of hopelessness. So as the team members were feeling that they didn't have hope that things would change, the team coach was feeling the same. So I think that this is a really interesting, very, very interesting process working in organizations and systems. The coach, individual coach, or the team coach become part of the system too, and experience through the interviews what some of the members of the team were feeling, to the extent that I was not sure if this team coaching engagement would work, because already the team coach was feeling hopeless himself about working with his team, not knowing really if he would be able to make a difference or to contribute. So this is great topics for supervision, is to see, and that's happening in individual supervision too, when we are experiencing the same thing that our clients are experiencing, we identify with them. Supervision is a great place to explore that. So we have 5 minutes to wrap up. We're going to have a second part. We're going to be facilitated by Wendy. Wendy asked me in the last 5 minutes to do like a brief reflection on the session, to do like a summary or something that can help participants. Before we do that, any questions? Any questions? We have a couple of minutes for questions before we do a summary of the session. And then we have a 30-minute opportunity to what is called networking meeting. Yes, Konstantinos.
Yes, thank you. As I heard you talking right there, talking about this hopelessness, there was this question that came to my mind, and I haven't done team coaching, but to what extent the coach felt that every single member had to be coached individually before taking the responsibility of the entire team, and so that brings out the difference between interview and individual coaching. So does the responsibility of coaching the team feel like the responsibility of coaching 10 people, like is it times 10?
Okay, so good question. And do you know there is a difference between interviewing everybody to build trust and to get to know and to do an assessment, that coaching them later? My suggestion is that not the same person is doing everything. My suggestion is that for team members to use different coaches, sometimes even not the same person, different coaches. And even the question is if the team coach should be also coaching the team leader. And there are benefits, when the team coach is also the coach or the team leader. The benefit is there is consistency. The team coach understands what's going on with the team and can use that in the individual team, in individual coaching. But also there are advantages of working with different people in terms of having completely different perspectives, insights, and sometimes can be tricky because maybe what happened between the team coach and the individual coach may be different. So they sometimes may also need to collaborate if it's okay with the client, just to have conversations so they are aligned. They don't go in different directions. So, but Konstantinos, the idea is not that the same team coach will be coaching individually each person. My suggestion would be that that probably not as effective and bring some issues also of trust and team.
Yes, Emil. Now reflecting on what we have been going through, I feel that when I look at the case, the main thing, how to answer the question, what would you explore as the team coaching supervisor? I would say, well, the main thing is to observe what is being presented, to help him that, and also help him to achieve clarity, because looking at the case, there's a mess there. It's a tremendous mess. And the role of a coaching supervisor is to bring the clarity. You know, so that is what I'm bringing from it.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. I agree with you. That will be also make a big difference. Well, thanks everybody for participating. I'm going to do like a brief summary. I wrote here in the chat room, I put a link with a document. These are all of the different programs that I'm going to be teaching next year. So you or may know somebody who may be interested in doing supervision training or team coaching or coaching. So this is the information. And I also want to put here my email, just in case that you want to reach me. And also I have in YouTube a channel with 300 videos. So that's a good resource if you're interested. The videos they're free, they're available in YouTube. And I have sessions, I have demonstrations of coaching supervision, team coaching. So there are a lot of resources. You can take advantage of that. And I use some of that in my trainings. So you are free to use them if you want in your own trainings too. The demos, the classes, these are all great resources. And feel free to use them if you find that your participant, your students in your program may benefit from that. So basically, to wrap up, Wendy, following your request, the idea is that Team Coaching Supervision is a reflective space where the team coach have the opportunity to look at the work that he or she is doing and look at some of the blind spots, some of the complexities. If they're working with a team coach, have the opportunity to look at that relationship too. And one possible model that we can use is the 7-eye model from Peter Hawkins with 10 eyes instead of 7. We have 3 more eyes. And the 3 eyes, one is about the stakeholders, who are the stakeholders. Another eye is about the doing, what the team is doing with the stakeholders, how they are working together. And the 3 eyes about the relationships. So one is the description, the doing, and the relationships. What is this team and the stakeholders, how they are relating to each other as a place to go and look at as part of supervision. I think it's very interesting. I really like, I was talking to Michel Moral said, no, this is not as complex as people say. If you bring everything like a we, it makes it easier. And I say, yes, that's another way to look at it. But I strongly believe that all team coaches should be working with a supervisor. I think that that's a very important part of the growth, development, and learning. And there is a lot to be done. I share with you 3 resources, 3 books, 3 places where you can find information. If you find any information anywhere else, let me know, because I have not found it yet. I have done my research. These are everything that I found by today. But I know that there is a team of people also working on developing some work on, like Clatterback and Liz Lewis that were presenting today. I know they're also working on that.
Yeah, that's true.
Wendy,
Damien, thank you so much for that reflection and sum up, really, of such a wonderful session. I would really like to thank you, Damien, for everything that you've shared during the session. But more than that, your generosity in terms of us being able to, move forward with some resources and so on. So thank you so much, Damien. I would like to sort of formally close this part of the session. But for those of you that can stay, we do have another 30 minutes set aside for some networking opportunities with Damien staying with us, which is fabulous.